Welcome. This is our 19th episode, and I'm very glad that Brendan was comfortable enough to share with me and everyone what he calls the wobble, which essentially is some form of old patterns that come up again, and we're left to navigate them in the best way we can, right? I think many people will see themselves in what we talked about here, and that's the beauty of these conversations. We have just added a coffee link to the description, so if you wish to support the podcast, there's a link. Also, if nature, well being, and art is of your enjoyment, please come check the daily content we post at woketype.com. Without further ado, here's the episode. See you around.
We were talking about the wobble.
Yeah, we were talking about the wobble. Do you want to, give a brief summary of what you mean by the wobble?
Yeah, man. So I like to call it the wobble because when you're not wobbling, it feels completely different. So basically, for me, it's like when I feel really grounded and more centered, usually, you know, I'm probably in the middle of, probably in touch with my practice in some way, be it meditation or whatever. Um, I feel like things are going well in general. Like I'm just kind of flowing, and I don't feel out of whack.
Hmm.
Uh, Life is happening. Usually, I feel good actually these days, especially with the way that my practice is. The things I do for myself and all of the little things I'm always messing around with and tuning into. Um, in general, I usually am trending in a pretty good way. And I know that sometimes all these new practices and all these new ways of being, and as I'm dropping old behaviors and getting more into alignment with um like a I guess an image I have of what a, being good would be like or whatever.
Hmm.
Um Performing well, functioning well. Sometimes the wobble is when uh I call it that way because the feelings get weird. I start feeling unease. Uh, my thoughts start trending in a different way, usually negative. Um, it's just you feel like you're wobbling, and I start to feel like I'm out of control. Old behaviors pop back up
So,
and
but
stuff like that.
that's a recurring pattern that happens. It's not new, right?
Yeah, no, absolutely, it's not new, but it sucks it
Yeah, I
sucks in
bet.
new ways every time.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's okay. Um, but yeah, it's not new. And then I just feel untethered. Like then I start having struggles to meditate. Like I can't seem to make myself sit, or basically all the bad little coping mechanisms, things that I usually do, start showing back up again, and I'm usually unhappy with that. And you just feel like you're like, oh, I was doing so well. Now I'm just so unsettled right now, and it's yeah, that's the wobble. I
Mm.
call
No, I completely hear you, man, because I resonate with that too. In my case, yeah, there's definitely that component of the coping mechanisms to whatever is happening. For me, is usually like procrastination, like running away from responsibilities, and like
Yep.
to whatever is most accessible, like games or TV,
Yep.
movies, TV shows, all the package, and even things like maybe as you are aware of my condition, like maybe eating things that I know that I won't feel good, you know even though I know perfectly well that I won't feel good afterwards. I still eat them. So it's a whole thing that uh it really goes downhill at a certain point, and then it happened. So the process goes like that, and then it happens that I realize, yeah, I don't feel good like this, and then slowly I come back to, you know, being more centered and doing things one step at a time, and committing to taking a step at a time and making things easy, and slowly I build up again the momentum of these preference that I have, which is to do, be more or less productive, do things that I need to do, and transition back to that point. But it happens that I come back to the old ways again, and it's normal because, as I told you, there's definitely other things that I can only look back in retrospective, and I can attest to that they stopped happening completely, and the process was the same. They were coming back sometimes, and I had to go through these strenuous process of going through them, and out of the blue they just disappeared. So it seems that there's some sort of intelligence to go through things and discard things, but that discarding of things just happens out of the blue. It's not really a choice, right? Because obviously that in these strenuous times of feeling those things, we absolutely don't want to feel like that, and part of the battle is to make them to resolve them,
Yeah.
right? And if I look in retrospective, the things that were in fact gone for good simply were gone, and I was really not, I didn't have a say in it. I just knew that it didn't resonate with me. It create a lot of friction, and someday it stopped happening for whatever reason.
Yeah. I was laughing so hard because it was just so resonant, and I felt my own spiral. I could hear it in like your description. Like that's exactly what it's like. It feels like shutting down to me. Like I start to feel like I'm shutting down. Sometimes it feels like a revolt. Like I've been being so good and everything's been going so well, and all those parts of myself they just want out. And it feels like they no, I don't want to meditate. I want to eat candy. And you're like, "No." It's just, that's happening. Like some part of me feels like it's just throwing a temper tantrum, and sometimes it's like that too. But one of the things I wanted to ask you while you're talking was, how do you feel about presence? I do you feel like you notice in those moments there's a how do you feel about the level of your presence while you're going through those shifts, when you feel more stable and centered versus when you're going through the wobble?
There's definitely a different quality of presence, right? But at the same time, if because there's this interest in experience, regardless of the type of experience that is going on,
Right.
that interest sort of creates more and more a sort of space. So things could be happening, and they could be happening in a way that you don't like very much, but there's these more of a distance, and the conflict is less, because part of the conflict is not exactly by what's happening, but by reacting to what's happening.
Mm.
And um and I find that is really the meaning of presence, because the body in those times is agitated, the mind is unsettled. So sometimes we think of presence as a quality of absolute stillness, and I find that that's not the case, because the body is not really still and the mind is not really still, yet there is this presence that doesn't react so much to whatever is unfolding. And I'm shifting towards that quality of presence, rather than really um, finding like complete stillness in the way that there's no thoughts, there's no much intensity going on. Rather than that, going finding stillness among the troubled waters, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah, because there's just like you said, I like how you said the interest is in whatever's happening. So that's it's that part
Yeah.
of the quality of presence doesn't change. Um the reason I was asking is for me, I think I have this I know that my presence is different because of my sense of time. And time feels different to me and different when I'm more or less present. And in those times during the wobble, I don't feel like I've been as present because time feels like it's skipping. it
What do you
feels,
mean? Does it go faster or slower?
it just feels like I was out of control. It feels like, um, it feels like you keep looking and then like things have been fast forwarded and or then they're going too slow and then fast. Like I feel out of whack. I don't
Mm,
feel like I've been present the whole time. When I'm more
mm,
centered, I'm present throughout the whole time. So if that I'm more here in general. I'm more present in the whole flow. So I'm not as attached to anything really, and I'm really just present.
yeah.
In those moments, I'm more focused on my myself, who I think I am. That's who becomes really clear in those
Mm,
moments. And and then there's the feeling, of course, and then there's the narrative about what's happening and all of that life, all of that life situation, thought form energy is like where the focus is, and that's where all my attention is, and that for me is very skippy.
mm,
It feels like things are skipping because I'm identified with that, I guess. In those moments, that's what's aching. That's what's taking up all the volume. Um, and then I feel very focused there. When I feel centered, I'm just here. Things could be happening, good, bad, but my focus isn't on the how I'm relating to it. But
mm,
in these times during the wobble, I'm very focused on how I'm relating. There's a lot of um, what I like to call time travel because I'm focused in the past or I'm focused on the future. I'm focused backwards, looking here, here, here. Like all this is where all the energy is tied up at, and I think that all of that is to me. And maybe this is kind of hard to talk about. In a sense that I'm trying to put words to this feeling about how time works. Um, so maybe I'll move on, but I will say I have an interesting relationship with time because when you have ADHD, your mind doesn't do time very well.
mm.
So I have a very crappy sense of time. And so for me, I noticed that during those wobbles, I feel more out of time. Like my connection to how fast things are going or how slow things are going seems really, really out of whack. But
Yeah.
when I'm more centered, it feels more stable.
Yeah.
Like I liked what you said about one step at a time because that's what it feels like. When I'm present, it just feels like one foot in front of the other. Like, okay, we're just here, and that's fine.
Yeah.
But other
Yeah, that's a good
times,
image. Yeah.
I'm on the roller coaster. I'm on the ride of whatever it is I'm going through, and it's loops and all sorts of stuff.
Hmm. One thing that I get a sense what you're saying, because presence as a quality to each body mind,
Yes.
and each person can speak to that. One thing that I've been questioning myself and investigating myself is the belief that the body mind has to be in a certain state.
Mm,
So, and I'm not absolutely sure that it has to be, it has to represent like a sense of calm or ease. So when you are at peace, I mean it can, but let's assume that the body mind is completely in a state of havoc, like just like the weather, right?
yeah.
There's wind, there's rain, then there's absolute stillness and calm and sun and all that. And I think the body, to equate the body to that, is a good metaphor, because the body has its own processes. some people eat the wrong type of food and their body goes haywire, right? So there's not really uh an ultimate controlling factor to deem the body as the testament for one to be peaceful, right? There can be that as a consequence, but ultimately, the body as an interplay of energies and physicalities, all that, and it's absolutely uncontrollable in the great scheme of things. So I am absolutely in that process, and I'm sharing this because I think it could be valuable for you too. I'm in that process of investigating really what is to be at peace and stillness, because if ultimately, if I can really control the body, control the mind, what does that mean in terms of finding contentment in all of this? Because it's ultimately it's one more one more thing to be exhausted, the belief that the body has to follow suit in whatever ideas we have of stillness and behavior and all that.
Yeah, no, I love that. The word wabi sabi kept popping up in my mind. Which is just this okayness with everything being not quite okay. The imperfections and all that. And I would like to I like what you're saying, because this is, I feel like it helps me recenter. I was reminded today when we were talking earlier, um as soon as we started having this engagement, I immediately felt more present. Like, all of the static that I had been hearing and feeling all day just came back, and then
Mm,
it I felt more, what I would say, me. I felt more present, more here. I felt more like okay. So it's like, oh my, I found that wave. Now, in that, I was reminded, like, I was thinking, what was the difference between before and then? And it was just like what you said. It's just weather. It was, I didn't do anything, and by being just, and by hearing your words, something was stirred up that shifted the whole energy.
mm-hmm.
Like, and in there, I found the center that I was looking for all week. It just showed up. How long this center will be here is who knows.
Exactly.
It depends on if this energy, like what you're saying, I think of it as move, if it needs to move through or not. As much as I've been describing it, I would say that, ultimately, a lot like what you're saying, is I'm not, my hands are up. I'm not really trying to resist this, that it's
Mm,
happening, because I don't know who would be in control at that point. You know what I'm saying? Like, who's got their hands on the reins? So I didn't I didn't ask for that energy to be present. I didn't ask for the wobble. And despite all of my resistance, it's still here. But when I'm feeling focused, I didn't really ask for that either. It just arrives, and then it's like, hey, you know, the the guru me, the best me, or whatever, it's more present. The one that all of a sudden all the answers are coming up. Hey, this is what we need to do. Hey, let's just focus. Hey, be cool, be chill. Oh, I love when that voice is in. When he appears and he's got all the answers, and he's like, hey, pay attention to this, feel that. That
mm,
quality. Um, but he can come and go too, just like all the other ones, and it's a lot like
yep.
weather. And I think that's why I was trying to point to presence, because the presence is through all of that, through all of those shifts. Used a good word earlier. I don't know if it was mind form, something like that. Anyway, all those shifts is being present, even amidst that, the storm. Or, you're right. I don't think we have to have be with this picture of stillness and whatever. You can be unsettled, and that's okay too.
Yeah.
That has its own frequency and energy.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
Absolutely.
which, if I can highlight really quickly, all of what that made me think about the porousness of your being, and how we can feel it's all coming from us and our thoughts and stuff, but then also your environment. the things around you that's happening, all of that you're tuned and tapped into, and that's all present. All that energy is you're connected with all of that, and so all of those things can affect you. Like
Yeah,
really, the weather could affect your mood. The things you're eating, the people you're talking to.
it's endless. Yeah.
Yeah, it's endless. Where you end and begin, it gets really funny when you start looking at it.
Yeah, and that's precisely the reason that I've been. It's funny because it's definitely the subject that I've been pondering about lately. That belief of that the body mind has to behave a certain way and to have certain qualities to represent the state of being, which can happen absolutely. We both have experienced that, but to make the point again, there's definitely no control, and every little thing can make the body go a certain way, and there's absolutely no input from anyone to say one way or another.
I think a big part of my personal practice, and I like to say I call it practice, but that might make it sound like I go sit down over here and I do this or that. But my practice is something I'm doing 24/7 as much as I can, whenever I remember, uh, which is quite often. Uh, but part of that is often, especially in these times where I'm in the wobble and everything is spinning and all these things are happening. There's always part of my practice is to drop out of that narrative and just stop trying to believe anything about anything being said, because there's a lot
Mm.
going on. My mind's identifying this is bad, that's good, that feels good, this is a good feeling, this is supposed to be here, that's a bad one. You're doing good here, you're doing bad here, all that's happening, and that's normal. And when I say to drop it, it's not to even to stop it from happening, because I think that's a battle you're not going to win. um it's instead to just be like, are you sure? And then
I love that.
when I was playing with that enough, you get good at the feeling of are you sure? And then you can kind of step into this open-endedness, and it doesn't make any of the narrative go away, but your focus shifts, and it's just kind of on the are you sure? And then it's more of a receptive, okay. So whatever is being said, okay, I'm not trying to battle or with it or decide if those thoughts are true or not. That
Hmm.
engagement with that is different, and it just shifts into that just space of are you sure? Is that true? Um
Wow,
and,
I love that.
and yeah, thanks. Yeah, it's a big part of that, and I think that helps. That to me is kind of also an element of presence. Um and so I was reminded about what you were saying then about the body not necessarily having to be in these what maybe you would say preferred states. um that's what it feels like to me too when it's
Hmm.
happening. Like, I
Mm.
think I used the word controlled burn earlier
Yeah, you did.
because it feels like, okay, yeah, things aren't kind of going the right way I want them to go, but this is fine too.
Yeah.
This has to happen. I don't know, like there's nothing I can do about it. It's here. um I do feel I saw at the all I can do is be as best as I can while this is happening.
Yeah.
um I show up as great as I can, or I remember the things I can remember. I touch the things I can touch, and I apply the best little 5% I can give if that's all I got. And I let the rest spin out. um
Yeah.
but yeah, the good thing is to remember you'll come back to focus. And I think today having that conversation with you was like so, like, perfect, like the perfect bookend. Like, it brought me straight back, like, oh yeah. um
Yeah.
Pretty cool.
Yeah, I love that you have found out by yourself that aspect of inquiring if you are absolutely sure that that is true, and because that kind of practice certainly made a lot of sense to me. I first heard that something very similar by Francis Lucille, a French teacher that um essentially hardcore non-duality, and He's teaching in the US. So his way to describe that inquiry is sort of to be absolutely relentless in the question that if you are sure that consciousness or reality is personal and not universal, and if there's a slight doubt,
Wow.
that is enough to be open to the possibility that consciousness is universal. And you don't really need to be sure.
Hmm.
You just need not to be absolutely sure that your belief about consciousness being personal is true. So if you doubt that even for a little, that is enough to rip a hole in the matrix and dive deeper and deeper. And I really love that you have discovered that for yourself, and I think it's very useful, a useful tool in inquiring one's experience. I absolutely love that, and yeah, want to absolutely underline that because it was and still is very precious and useful to me.
Yeah, I underlining is good. That was thank you for bringing that into focus, because maybe I don't always, I'm doing a lot of stuff, so maybe my focus, I'm not always aware of that, and that's good to bring that to the center.
Mm,
I definitely had a lot of help to figure that out. From engaging with all these wonderful people in my lives, and all the different teachers I listen to, and my Reiki practice and all that kind of stuff, all is like in that same vein. It's all going in that same way, and I think having that more open ended, less decided, um, uh, I don't want to say outlook, viewpoint,
yeah, more of a stance.
stance.
Yeah,
Yeah, there we go.
yeah.
That
We
stance
got it.
is very powerful for shifting things, I think.
Oh, for sure.
Um,
100%.
yeah, when you can manage the stance. But I think part of the wobble, I think, is you're holding the stance for so long. Sometimes it just feels like you don't want to do it anymore. And I think there's something in the body, there's something in the mind form, there's some sort of energy that's present that just wants to revolt. I feel, for me
Mm,
personally,
I
and
hear you.
and it
Yeah.
comes up and it's just like, no, I don't want to. I want to complain. I want to I want to just really dive into this story about woe is me, and I really want to I want to feel it. I want to it really wants to express, and then you just, okay, there's nothing I can do. I just got to let it roll through. I know I'll get that stance again eventually. It'll come back.
Yeah. What I think that it is that these energies, to sort of, tell a story of all these things. It's not really true whatever we say, but
Yeah,
to
of course.
to sort of tell a narrative of what's happening. I would say that these things come up occasionally until our okayness, up until the point that they come up, because the cycle goes like this. So we are okay, and we are pretty hanging out in being, and then these sort of intense times come up. So my sort of look on that process is that there's that okayness, that right before the storm, as to infuse the storm. So there's that learning process on how to traverse the okayness to the storm, so that the storm is also um, infused by this quality of presence and tranquility. And sometimes it takes dozens of times, sometimes it takes hundreds of times, sometimes it takes thousands of times. Who knows why and how these things work, and how these things can finally be let go of. Who knows, right? But there's definitely that process that happens. And I always go back to the same thing, that which what matters in my in this experience is definitely the interest, because as long as you are interested in investigation or meditation, and um and that is a 24/7 process. As long as you are interested in that absorption of being completely enamored by what is happening, what is experience, that process will lead you to resolutions and insight, and that's all you can, you
Yeah.
know, you can do, and even that you cannot really do, but there's definitely that uh importance of just honoring the process and honoring your interest, and everything else will follow and come to you in the grace of the Lord.
Yeah, I I think you're dead on. Um, wow. I just had this image where you're talking of like constriction and expansion. And in those moments, you're just, because all of what we're talking about has to do with who you think you are. Who do you
Hmm.
think you are in that moment? And that's a lot of where the friction's at. And so in those moments, I was thinking about being contracted, and I'm contracted. I'm really focused on who I think I am in those moments versus, um, it's those. That's where the big wobbles coming in at that focus, I think. And then in the more centered moments, the who do I think I am then is more expanded, and it's more
Yeah.
inclusive. Um, so I like what you said about bringing that level of expansion into the storm. So when the storm comes in, we don't constrict,
Yeah.
and we're open to the whole thing and all of it. Then, of course, the funny thing about that is if you can do that, I think it kind of just clears the storm out, because part of the reason the storm sticks around so long is our focus, because we're so
Mm.
focused. Because who do you think you are? You think you're that person that just had all that happen to you, and as you're focused on that, that's as you feel, and it helps generate that energy more and more. But if you can just be what you said and just bring that quality of presence and expanded awareness, if you can bring that into the full quality during that storm, then it kind of just passes through. It's just like you said, I like weather. It'll just pass through, and then, well, then there's no change from that moment to the next moment, even though
Yep.
lots has changed. There nothing. There's it's no different. The quality is
Yep.
no different. And so when you were sitting on the cushion and you were sitting still and present and felt that level of equanimity, that level of peace, you can bring that in. The storm is happening. There's all sorts of stuff. Feelings are flaring. Thoughts are coming through, passing, and all this other stuff. And then, but you're still having that level of presence and equanimity of the wave coming through, and the allowing of your expression to be expressed as whatever that looks and feels like.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
This conversation really resonates with my own explorations lately, and what has been happening and the questions that have been surfacing have been like essentially asking, can these, whatever these means, it could be like a sensation or a thought or both, can these really change the fact that I exist?
mm.
And and that type of inquiry, again, it at first you might not be sure, but that unsureness is enough to go back to the concept of asking, are you sure? That unsureness is enough to propel you to a deeper investigation. And when that gets more deep and deeper, the answer to that question is not a philosophical answer inside your head.
Mm.
It is the resonance of the experience of being, and that can literally obliterate the the discomfort. So if you, even if it's physical or psychological, that immersion in being, in the fact that I am here existing, and I don't have proof that it is my body that needs to be here to exist. That they're just existence.
Mm.
When you don't resort to any knowledge or thought, you don't have proof that you need the body to exist. There's simply the fact of existing. It's the only fact, at least the only fact that each every one of us, if we are speaking in the same wavelength, can attest to. We can attest, each one of us can attest that I am here without I am here, like, period,
Hmm.
without anything to be said after that. And that has been the question, and my sort of inquiry lately, that propels me to these assurance that whatever is happening cannot touch this sense of being, of simply existing, not simply existing because of this and that, and trying to find reasons why, but simply being aware, simply existing.
I had a lot to say to that, but then
There's really not a lot to say, if this is understood. I mean, it's fun to talk about, obviously, but yeah.
you gave me a new idea. Some new concepts to play with. You put some words to some feelings. I would have never said it that way, and I'm really excited about it. I want to get some clarity on that. What did you say? Universally personal universe, or are you? What was
That
that?
consciousness is universal,
Yeah,
or personal.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
That was resonating while you were talking, and that's all I kept feeling was that um kind of shift back and forth between those two perspectives about
Mm.
it being consciousness being personal or universal. And then wow, that was really fun. Uh
Yeah.
and then
I think you and me are very alike in terms of in the way we operate, because I sense that you also operate much more on the feeling level,
yes.
and like, these recognitions have to be felt, deeply felt, for them to, impact you. And
Yes.
I operate the same way.
Cuz the idea doesn't do anything for me. It's just an idea, and I can know it or not know it, and I can play with it. Whatever. But for me personally, there's never any confusion. I mean, of course there's varying levels of confusion, but I'm not ever completely convinced or focused on what I'm thinking. And I'm always more focused on the feeling of it. And
Hmm.
um I mean, I guess that's I don't even know how to put that into words, but that, like what you're saying, yeah, I do feel like I'm feeling it, and when I have a feel of it, even when we're talking, the words don't matter. I hear the words, and yeah, they're assembling images, and I'm understanding things, but really I'm feeling what you're saying.
What matters is the understanding,
Yeah,
which is a snap of feeling, and you
yeah,
feel what is said.
yes, that's where all the juice is, I guess, so to speak.
Yeah, absolutely. I feel the same.
What is resonant and within what you're saying, and is that true now? How does what you're saying, where is that now? And I feel like that's what is happening. So as you're talking, I'm feeling what you're saying now. It's not
Hmm.
about what I remember about that or what I could think about it later, but how what you're saying is true exactly right now and where that's at. um
Absolutely.
I think that's part of the wave, man.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Because all it matters is now, because, there's there's been many occasions before that you certainly heard all of this said in slightly different ways, and it just didn't, touch you in any way. And there's God knows why, sometimes that you hear something that has been heard a lot of times, but it certainly is heard a different way. And what comes to mind right now is, like, the meeting that we had with Amy.
Yeah.
Uh, I was really on one of those phases that you are kind of like right now going through. And just by being in her presence and listening to her, it's not exactly what was said, but I was said in absolute terms, and there was not really me hearing Amy say something about spirituality, but there was just this instantaneous f- resonant feel that was happening, and it's like a download without any delay
Yeah.
that's happening, and that's so precious and powerful that it's what I call grace. God knows why or how that comes to be, but it happened, and it's just marvelous to witness.
I feel like that's exactly what you did to me today. Like, I'm not even joking. I was, and I've been dancing around talking about it this way because part of. Okay, let me go back. Today, when I all from this whole week, I've been feeling this wobble at varying levels of intensity. This morning I was pretty frustrated with myself. Just this snarling ball of like, because it's so irritating. Um,
Mm,
and then just talking to you, and when you said those words, it was so impactful. It gave me pause, and in that pause, something was released, and
yeah.
I exactly the amount of focus I was looking for appeared. But a big, I guess I would say this. One of the things for me is I'm very interested in lately is I've been calling it vibrational exploration, and I've been
Mm,
call and it's all under this premise of an expanded self concept. Now, some people might say that you don't want to have any self concept. Why play with that? And that's fine. I think if that's what's working for you. Me personally, I'm aware that I have self concept, so I'm not going to fight that. It's here. So,
mm-hmm.
and I'm not. So I think to have it be more inclusive of myself as I am, and so I think about the vibrational exploration, and what you're talking about is energy. To me, it sounds like energy. So that's the transmission, because when we're talking even now, that's a vibration. Those are words. These words are assembled into a certain wavelength. This is the
Mm-hmm.
transmission. Where is the knowledge? Is it in the words? When I say them as they appear, what is it that's being felt? What is that when you know what
Mm-hmm.
I'm saying? Um, uh, where is that knowledge and knowing held at? Is it my knowing or your knowing? When we read instructions, is the information held on the page or is it in our minds? Where is all that? And so all of that you start to kind of get a feel for. It's just energy. Everything's energy. So um, when you think of when if I think of myself as a physical person in this body and this hands and this mind, that can be a very useful way to think about myself to go get groceries or do a bunch of stuff. It can be very useful.
Yeah.
That's a way to think about yourself. You're already doing it. It's just that most people are doing it. To think of
Yeah.
yourself vibrationally, it makes the lines of you more fuzzy, and so then you start to be more, a lot like what you're saying.
More transparent,
Yeah, it's more
right?
transparent because then what is me? And then I'm thinking about everything as energy. And when you're speaking, it's not about the words, it's about the wavelength you're sending. And that's what I'm tuned into, and that's the feeling. And then those are the transmissions. And those are
Absolutely.
those are
Yeah.
before the thoughts. Those are more it's a more direct kind of feeling.
Mm-hmm.
Um
Mm-hmm.
and so yeah, that's it. That's vibrational exploration.
Yeah, I think we already talked about this, but that's the premise of the tantric tradition, which is to essentially investigate sensations. And by sensations, they mean that vibrational field that is felt, and not only of the body, but the whole spectrum of the universe
Yes.
is contained within these vibrational field. So these exploration that you talk about, I because you began by prefacing that with it's not good to have a self concept and all that, but I think it's completely the opposite of that, because that kind of exploration leads to the insight that um what could be said there's no self concept, or which is the same thing, that if my body is the whole thing, the whole spectrum, the whole universe, the whole energetic field. If I'm everything, then myself is in everything. So there's an apparent um, contrast or negation to say that I don't have any self concept versus my self concept is within everything, but they are really the one and the same.
Yes. Oh yeah. Well, I love inverting those things. So it's really fun. I don't know why anyone wouldn't do this. If you focus yourself all the way to the point of being this one little person over here, poor little me, and I'm just locked off, I'm closed off, I'm just this little body. That's a cool far out perspective, and then you can invert that. And then like what you're saying, then it's inclusive. And that's the same thing, but it's just the same coin, we've spun it around. And you're flipping, playing with those views, all of that is explorative. In a very felt sense of way. I think this whole conversation we're talking about, and all of these conversations we're having, more or less, I think they're giving voice to our felt sense of being in a way that, in general, I would say, isn't present in our general consensus for society, like our societal structures and media and all the other things. Those images are more representative of this world out there and the people in it as they appear, and not much context is given to the felt sense of being. The felt sense of being.
Yeah.
And so these kinds of conversations I feel are more explorative of, and more inclusive of, me as I am versus me as I appear.
Mm.
Yeah, and I think that's what's powerful to traverse those lines. And if it's resonant and you can hear it, and it makes you aware of these qualities within yourself in a more felt sense and not a thought sense.
Absolutely. I think that's a good doorway to most people, like to be more inclusive to everyone, because everyone is has this innate feeling, sensitivity to the world and to themselves. So the question becomes, what really separates me as the feeling of me that I get?
Mm.
And for most people it is to be contained within the walls of the body, and that's basically sensation, right? So what separates that encapsulated sensation that I call the body, and the next thing that is, to my left, to my right, around me? So this question, I think, that promotes these expansion at first, because there's really no, obviously, that the sense of the body, or the sense of what I call me, can have heaviness to it, and there's this contraction that is deeply felt, and it is uncomfortable, and that we try to get away from. But when we become to relax and be more at ease with that, and let the contraction take the place that it wants, because we do the complete opposite.
Mm-hmm.
We instigate the contraction by running away from it. And when there's that willingness to hold dearly that contraction and let it move, there's these expansion more and more. And the question that I was asking before, what is the difference between me as what I refer as my body, and the next thing in my environment, like my wall, or my lamp, or my desk, or the screen that I am watching you right now. So these kind of subtle, very subtle, kind of explorations, which are like, can really be taught. It's they are so subtle, because, like, if you compare the sensation of your head to the sensation, let's call it like that, of the screen in which I'm seeing you, what's really the difference?
Mm-hmm.
I can say maybe that my head feels heavier, but this sense of equalness becomes to dawn more and more. Both are known, both are understood to be here somehow. So there's that factor that both have, the knowing factor. I'm recognizing that both are here, part of this experience right now. And there's also some kind of exercises that help on that, which also from Francis Lucille that I talked about yesterday in his tantric explorations, which are like you sit down and, as if it were, transfer the sensations of your head to another object like the wall or the screen. So you feel as if the wall or the screen were part of your own body.
Mm.
Maybe try that out for 5 minutes. It's not a practice to be done like for hours on end. It's just a practice with the objective to um blur the contraction that tells you that you are within this box of skin.
Mm.
These kinds of explorations are very useful to to have this sense of expansiveness be a live thing, not just all these things that we have been talking about for the past 5 minutes are very felt.
Yes.
And that's the doorway to many people that don't care about philosophy in terms of spirituality, and but care about the felt part. So that doorway of beginning with the body and starting asking questions and feeling what is this body in relation to everything else. Like maybe first it helps to start with something that is a dead object, like a wall or a lamp or a chair, and then when we become more sure of these of that there's not really much of a difference in terms of direct perception, maybe then go to another body and another person, which things get much trickier there, because there's a sense of you and me, very very rooted in our ways to relate with people. But yeah, all this to say that there's definitely that doorway of feeling instead of being too intellectual, because intellect has to be dropped. It can help at first, but there's definitely these contraction on the body that undermines how we see the world.
Yeah, you're being a pioneer um to your experience, because the idea of yourself is dead. It's a flat thing. Okay, I'm this body. Okay, what does that mean?
Yep.
You know what a body is. You got a lot of ideas about that. It's a body. It's got blood in it. Blah 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 blah. You can talk all sorts of these ideas about who you are, and even if your idea isn't biological, and it's I'm Brandon, and I'm a man, and I live in this house, and all the other stuff. All that is just information, and it's just, to know myself that way is to know facts about myself, is to know dead flat information. What we're speaking about is being a pioneer, and really stretching at and pulling at and playing with consciousness itself, which is actually something you can do.
Yep.
And then you're playing with those ideas, and you're getting a more up to date impression of yourself. You're feeling into your reality, feeling into yourself as reality. Yes, I was reminded of this book that I have that's also something a lot like what you were talking about, and it's I have to look up the title, but it's called, I think it's called Mind Games or something. But it's basically, it's not a very long book, and it's just a bunch of invitations to, hey, try this, play with this, pretend this person is that. One of them is like, the game is to rid the world of your judgments, and so to just like us for a little bit, to just not label anything, anyone, any feeling, anything, and just, how far can you remove all labels and just completely not label or know anything. And there's all these little ways you can play with it, because ultimately it's just a way of being. It's a habit. We've been thinking and relating to ourselves in this way.
Yep.
That we're taught to do.
Absolutely.
It, and everyone's doing it, so it's mirrored back to you, which makes it really feel very solid because everyone's telling you you're over there in that body, and you're like, that's right, I'm over here, I'm in this body, and you're over there and you're in that body, and they're like, that's right, and everyone's doing that, and and then those ideas get really solid, and you just feel
Yeah.
it. Yes, that's me because
Yeah.
I recognize it. I'm this body. So when you start to play into that and really, really investigate, what does it mean to be in this body? Well, where does this feeling end, and what is a feeling, and how there's other kinds of knowing than that knowing of that constructed conceptual knowing that we have, which we're really good at, and we're really good at navigating the world that way. The intellect, that's one type of intellect, but there is a more expansive, more, I don't want to say more, there's other, or in addition to, a more intuitive, a more felt sense, a more direct, less constructed sense,
Mm.
of feeling, of knowing. The same way that you can know something is in your hand, you don't have to think about that, you just know it. The same way
Yep.
you know something is hot or cold. Um, you might label it hot as cold, but you know you know it first, and you know it in a different way. Um, Another way you could play with that, I was thinking about, is just using your hands and like closing your eyes and feeling stuff, and like feeling around the table and like playing with it. And then what is that? And how do you know what's in your hand?
Absolutely.
How do you know what that
Yeah.
is? You dig in your pocket and you fiddle around in there and you know what it is before you lay eyes on it. You're aware of what it is just by feeling it. And that's a different kind of
Yeah.
knowing. So, yeah.
That's a very worthwhile exploration. Yeah. The sense of feeling is I feel that it's much more accessible again to many people to to really dive deep into experience, because we it becomes like a child. A child has these innate sense of exploring the world, like playing and by touching and doing all these things, using the senses to know the world. So it's very innate to us. It could be sort of a faculty that has been dormant and sleeping, but it's very easy to wake
Oh,
up that
wow.
childlike exploration, because it's very direct to us and very known to us. Granted that for different people, different things work for sure, but try it out and see if it is interesting. I think that's there's no point in pursuing something if it is not
Yes.
interesting. And even what I'm saying that is interesting to me, it is not interesting all the time. There's occasions that flame of wanting to explore that arises, but it's not always the case. So definitely another generalization that for me works is to follow that that interest and not do things um out of need and obligation and all that. I feel that that is useful. If you want to close this, Brandon, we are almost at 1 hour. Yeah, I just want to say that I we are almost at the 20th episode,
Hey.
and I'm very glad the way that this is evolving. Mainly, like the last episodes that you and me have done solo without a guest have been, I think, really really good, and there's definitely a sense of ease from both of us that is more on the surface. I think, and that reflects in the quality of the conversations. I'm very glad that of this process, and it's such a beautiful thing, really.
Yeah, it's one of my favorite things to do. It really is. I really enjoy it. It's really easy, but not in a like, oh, it's so easy and it's not work or effort, but it's easy to do all the work and effort. It's easy to show up and it's easy to be here and it's so cool. So yeah, I think we did a good thing. I mean, I will close out on what a wonderful invitation to reopen the investigation into who and what you are in a more direct sense, because that's what happened. And essentially, it could be said that you know enough. You go, okay, that's what I am, and that's it. And I don't need to know anything else. That idea is good. This idea, I have myself as this and that, it is very functional. It works. I don't need to explore it anymore. I'm that. And then, although new experiences happen, although you feel all sorts of things, you just keep reattributing it to this idea of yourself, and it ends there. There's no investigation. So to become interested in that and flow in that direction is certainly an invitation. But I'll close with this. A lot like you said, you got to do it if you want to do it. If that feels alive for you, if it feels good, if that's resonant, and you're like, man,
100%.
that sounds cool, I should try that out. Do it. If you try it and it makes you mad and you're like, oh, this is dumb, I just can't get the hang of it, then maybe it's not for you right now. Yeah. There's other way. There's a way that will jive for you, and this whole world's a buffet, and you just got to go out there and put all the things on your plate and try this and try that. And yes, I like this, keep that, and throw the other stuff you don't like away. So no use fiddling with it and fighting with it if you're not enjoying it. That's all. Cool.
Absolutely. Exhaust everything.
Yes, exhaust everything.